morning and welcome to Morning Movie News. A reminder, if you want to participate in Beyond the Trailer's upcoming fan video about Big Hero 6, you need to hand in your video by the end of day this coming Monday, September 15th. And again, your video is supposed to say why you're excited to see Big Hero 6, what your hopes are for it, or why you're not excited to see Big Hero 6 and what your concerns are. Film a video, upload it to your YouTube account unlisted, and then send that unlisted link to me at grace@gracerandolph.com. Again, by the end of the day, this coming Monday, September 15th. All right, so let's get on to today's morning movie news. Mockingjay is really beginning to ramp up its publicity. We got the big Katniss poster. It was finally revealed. We had her back the other day, which was pretty cool, but then this one I think is the coolest. They really saved the best for last, and we'll talk about that poster in a minute. But also, they dropped a teaser yesterday for the trailer, the first really big trailer for the movie, which is going to hit Monday. I will review it, but it's going to be a Lionsgate exclusive, so I'm going to have to wait 24 hours before I can upload my review, just so you know what the setup is. So let's, first, I thought that the sneak peek was very funny, where President Snow is like, oh, it's the things that you love the most that can hurt you. And I'm like, joke's on you, Snow. She doesn't really like PETA. But maybe she's coming to like him. I'm coming to like PETA, as I've discussed with you before. In fact, to the point where I want more PETA. I don't think there's enough PETA in this campaign. I think that while Katniss is a very likable heroine, you know, the Gandhi of this whole capital, situation versus District 13, I feel that PETA, in a large degree, is the heart of the franchise. That's what he's become. Really a great character. I like him a lot. Also, Haymitch, these are characters, thanks to the first two movies, I've become very attached to. Effie, and I'm not really seeing them in this new promotional material. But we'll see. We'll see. It's early on, as we all know. So let's talk about this poster. Very cool poster. I really like it a lot. I know a number of you do. I know there's a Katniss fan who follows me, and he or she was like, I can hardly breathe. This is so amazing. And it is really amazing. It's really cool to see Katniss in kind of this warrior pose. I think that it's interesting. I think this is the correct situation. They've been angling her body, right, to mimic the Mockingjay. I think this is the first time that occurred to me, but it's used very effectively here. And I love using the wings of the Mockingjay as if they're her wings. And I like the Phoenix, analogy, and I wish that we were getting our real Phoenix saga, the good one, over in the X-Men movies, but I think in the meantime I'll take what I can get with this imagery. So that's very good, but I do like that into her actual costume is built that same theme, that she has, you can see from the behind poster that these leather plates on her shoulder are actually wings in the back, which is very cool. And you have to wonder how Cinna feels, that he's probably having the crap beat out of him in some capital jail, yet, Katniss is like, well, sorry, but this other person, this other fashion-forward thinking person who got out is now designing my costumes and doing a very good job, so sorry, Cinna. So I think the fact that he could be so easily replaced is funny, but because she has such a stylized uniform. It's also, I don't know, it's an interesting choice because it is very capital, and it kind of goes against the imagery we've been seeing for District 13, a place that, is very concentration camp-like, the Effie really downgrading her look, the scarf around her head, and they almost look like they wear prison clothes. So to go high fashion is interesting. But I guess if you want, this is going to be a war fought over the PR waves, a lot of propos, and I think that's a really interesting element to the book, probably its most interesting element, because we've seen these stories of rebellion before, but fighting a public relations, war is very interesting, and it builds off, a lot of the work that was done not only during World War II with, Adolf Hitler had his filmmakers, of course, infamously working for him, but even recently, you might have seen this news story on CNN about the CIA or one government department making an anti-ISIS video to combat all the all the propaganda that ISIS is putting out there on the internet. So it's still very much being used today, and I think to focus on that would be a really interesting scenario. Let's see if Francis Lawrence does that. So far, it hasn't really. I think we had those first two propos coming out for the teasers. Even before the official teaser trailer, and that was really exciting, and I hope that that continues to be played up. I think that that's where this franchise and this third film could go even further and become something that, a lot of you, I got a couple of questions. I'm still working on getting through all the questions you guys asked me yesterday for the 24 hours Ask Grace, thanks to reaching 10,000 followers on Twitter. I'm having a great time talking to all of you. These rapid-fire question and answers. It's kind of fun that way, doing it on Twitter. But some of you said, well, why don't movies like The Hunger Games get any Oscar consideration? And that's because there really isn't some deep meaning behind them. But, you know, I think that if they were to maybe try and add it to these films, maybe we would see some Oscar consideration. I think that's why The Dark Knight was considered for Oscars, and I feel robbed of a Best Picture nomination. Although, for some reason, it's so fashionable these days to turn against Nolan's trilogy. I just don't understand it. I mean, I didn't like the third film or the first film, but I thought the second film was absolutely brilliant, and just to throw it under the bus, that's another conversation for another day. But it continues to confound me of how, you know, there's no longevity in fan loyalty to some degree. Like everyone turning on Gravity when Interstellar seemed to maybe, you know, be a little bit of a problem coming right after Gravity. And everyone's like, what? Gravity was crap. What are you talking about? And I'm like, where were all of you when I said it was crap? So anyway, I would like to see this film maybe take on a little bit more of social importance, and then maybe it will be considered for something, maybe at least a Golden Globe. But it looks very cool, and also I think it's very funny that Katniss looks so warrior heroic when she's not really a warrior. Like when they're like, will you fight with us, Katniss? And I'm like, she's yet to fight anyone. You know, she's like, as people have said, she's been in 2 games and she's never had to kill anybody. Very, very convenient. At least I believe that's correct. She's never killed anyone, at least by her own hand. She might have helped lead to their death, but you never had to take a life. Although, I don't want to give anything away, but very interesting situation. Okay, all right, so let's move on to the second story of the day before I get myself in trouble. These Star Wars vehicles. Now, everybody was like, oh, yesterday someone was like, oh, Grace, I can't believe that you're not talking about the Star Wars vehicle photo. So, and also the Batmobile, but I posted a special video about that yesterday over on regular Beyond the Trailer. But so I went and I was like, what photos of Star Wars? And the reason I didn't see these stories is because the websites that I go to see what's going on didn't cover these leaks. So I think I'm going to try and expand my net of where I'm looking to, you know, cull news stories from. But anyway, so I found this photo, and it's really anticlimactic. Yes, there's an X-Wing, and there's a half of a Millennium Falcon, but we've already known that they're using these vehicles before, from the you know, the Force for Good, Force for Change, whatever those very nice charity videos are that J.J. Abrams is making. He made one recently in front of an X-Wing that wasn't wrapped in blue painter's tarp. And then also we've seen the Millennium Falcon being worked on in the special effects shop. So we knew that these vehicles were something that were going to appear in the film in a practical way. They weren't going to be CGI. So I'm not quite sure why this was news. And I just, you know, I think Star Wars is such a unique scenario. We talk about it all the time, and I just don't know where the Star Wars excitement is. Every time I talk about something that's Star Wars, nobody, you know, it doesn't get a lot of YouTube hits. No one does. I mean, there's not a lot of search traffic being driven in the direction of that film right now. And some of you have defended it who are Star Wars fans, and you're like, hey Grace, there's a lot of excitement for Star Wars in these like pocket Star Wars fan communities. And I'm like, okay, where are those? So I'd really like to know, honestly, where is the Star Wars excitement brewing? Like, where is it going on? Where are people like, I'm so excited for Star Wars? And also, this brings up an interesting question. With Disney having so many properties, do you think that they're holding off on getting people excited about Star Wars to really focus on the Marvel films right now, particularly Avengers Age of Ultron? Because there's a pretty big gap between the 2 films. There's Avengers, comes out in the beginning of May 2015, and then you don't have Star Wars Episode 7 until December 2015. So I think there's a very good chance they won't really start to promote that film in earnest until that point, which is interesting because, you know, there are other films that are coming out in 2015 that are you know, getting teasers and getting a lot of promotional material out there, and Star Wars it isn't building the momentum I think that's necessary. I mean, look at Batman v Superman. People are talking about that. It's such a frenzy, and, you know, Warner Brothers is really good at, stirring the pot or poking the hornet's nest and just making sure they keep that fan chatter up. But Disney has to compartmentalize and prioritize, and so do you think that that is what's going on? Do you think they're like, everybody just pay attention to Avengers Age of Ultron right now. We're going to make sure you all go and see that. We're going to try and get even higher up on the all-time box office list with Avengers 2. And then, maybe they'll even have a trailer. Somebody asked me when we think we'll see a trailer for Star Wars Episode 7. I bet you see a pretty darn good one in front of the Avengers 2. And then they'll just try to funnel all that excitement into the next big picture, which will be Star Wars. So, very interesting situation, and perhaps the first sign of a problem with the expanded Disney empire. All right, so that's the second story of the day. The third story of the day is 23 Jump Street. This trended yesterday on Twitter. I was like, why is 23 Jump Street up here? And of course, it has been not necessarily greenlit, but it's moving forward. And they've taken a screenwriter from the second film. His name is Rodney Rotham, and he worked on the script with Jonah Hill, etc., to craft that. But apparently, Sony liked what he did. I think it's Sony and maybe MGM or United Artists. It's one of those smaller, I think those actually might be the same thing right now. But they've asked Rodney to start working on the script, and Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill will return. Now, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, that's the big question mark. Will they return? They are producing, they are helping to develop the script, but they aren't necessarily going to sign on. I have mixed feelings on that. I feel Phil Lord and Chris Miller need to move on to their next property at this point. They did a great job so far. Every movie they've made has been really good. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 21 Jump Street, 22 Jump Street was so good, the Lego movie, and I think that to make a third 23 Jump Street, I think is too big of a risk for them. I mean, I as a fan would like to see them return because I trust them in terms of bringing the quality to the product, but at the same time, if I were their agents, I'd say you need to move on to another property already. Maybe some kind of comic book movie. That seems to be the path that directors are supposed to follow these days. And I think they're ready. They're very good. They had a lot of great action in the Lego movie. They handled meta humor really well. And as you might have heard, Marvel did approach them to take over for Ant-Man, but out of respect for Edgar Wright, they declined. We'll see if that's a decision maybe they come to regret. They could have been like, well, Edgar, we will make sure that a lot of your stuff stays in, and we'll maybe have a nod to you in the movie? I don't know. Don't hate us. We really need this for our careers. But, Phil Lord and Chris Miller have great careers. But I think that Ant-Man, I don't know, I think we'd all feel a lot better if they were directing, right? So I'm curious, what would you do if Phil Lord and Chris Miller came to you and said, should we direct 23 Jump Street? What would you say to them? And also, do you feel betrayed that they had that amazing end credit sequence making fun of sequels and extended franchises in 22 Jump Street, and then here they are making a 23 Jump Street. I think some people were saying that, oh, they'll never make a 23 Jump Street. The whole point of that end credit sequence was to make fun of that. But yet, Hollywood finds a way. They're like evolution that way. It's like in Jurassic Park, they're like science finds a way. It's, it's like life finds a way or whatever. It's like Hollywood always finds a way if there's money to be made. And also, which of those scenarios would you like to see? I would love to see one of those scenarios. I think it would be hilarious. And I'd also love to see that great joke about, oh, if you haven't seen 22 Jump Street by now, I'm off the hook. It's been out for a long time, but I think it's really amusing. Some people might have to rent it. Okay, if you don't want a spoiler, skip to the question right now. I'd love to see Seth Rogen come in as Jonah Hill for just a little bit and then not even say anything about it. I thought that was one of my favorite jokes from the after credit sequence. It was just really unexpected and hilarious. And I liked how self-aware it was. That they're like, we're interchangeable to some people. And I thought that was really clever and a good way to deal with that. All right, so that's the third story of the day. The viewer question comes from Jessie the Good Witch. And Jessie says, question, hi Grace. You have recently been talking about female superheroes struggling to get a spotlight, but when do you think we will get a good female supervillain in a movie? Some of the more current female villains have not been given the primary antagonist role or the focus in the plot. Often they are just side characters to a more prominent male villain. And I'm not just talking about an anti-hero like Catwoman, my favorite character, I like her too, but I mean a good, and by that I mean evil, solid, no-holds-bar female villain. Which female villains would you like to see in the Marvel and DC movies if you had a choice? Smiley face, Jessie Jones from Ventura, California. Well, Jessie, I would not only like to see an evil female villain, but just an evil villain. I think that DC did a really great job with the Joker, obviously, and then they even had a problem with their villains in The Dark Knight Rises, and I think they had, even Zod was a problem for the villains in the villain situation in Man of Steel. And then, of course, Marvel is infamous for their villains that either turn into heroes, anti-heroes like Loki, or who are truly incompetent, like Ronan the Accuser and Guardians of the Galaxy. And, of course, there you have a situation where Nebula was just, a lackey. And even some people, like myself, felt that Gamora was depowered. So anyway, first point. I just want to see an evil villain of any gender. I don't care. I just want to see someone who genuinely is a threat and is competent. And I guess they wouldn't be a threat if they weren't competent, but I want to see that. And I'm hoping that we'll see that with Lex Luthor in the upcoming Batman v Superman film. So that's my first point. My second point is, yes, I would like to see a female villain who, I would like to add some points to yours, Jesse. Not only who is purely evil and has no redeeming qualities, but that isn't doing it for the typical reasons that they make women evil sometimes. Like, oh, you wronged my kid or my family or my boyfriend or husband. It's usually some kind of familial situation where it's like, oh, she's really defending it. It's like a mother defending her cubs or her young or something. And I'm like, can't she just be a career villain who wants to do something extraordinary? So I would like to see that. We could maybe see the Enchantress in Thor, whatever the third installment is called. That would be nice. I'd like to see that. Someone actually yesterday said, well, where's the Red Skull? Do you think the Red Skull will ever come back? Well, what about his daughter, Sin? I think that might be a good way to solve that, or granddaughter, I guess, and have her lead Hydra now. I think Hydra needs to kind of move away from the whole Nazi angle. Every time I see Nazis, I think Indiana Jones when I'm in this kind of blockbuster action film. So I think it would be great to kind of evolve Hydra into something that's more modern and current and seems like a threat that we would face today. I think Iron Man 3 tried to touch upon that, but then, of course, a lot of people were very unhappy with the way that developed. But something in that direction. So that's what I'd like to see. Poison Ivy, maybe. Oh, and by the way, tomorrow I'm going to review Assault on Arkham, the Batman animated movie. I watched it last night. One of you during the 24-hour question period asked me if I was going to check it out. I did. I said, I'll go watch it tonight, and I did. So look for that review tomorrow on Think About the Ink. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget your Big Hero 6 videos. Write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories, the viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.